Hi, I'm Nate.
I'm Noah.
And welcome back to another chat episode of Talking Lion. In this episode, we're going to be talking to our friend and drummer, Jacob Harelick. But first, a few reminders. We think anybody listening to the show is awesome, and we'd love to hear from you. So now we have a number that you can text if you want to reach us.
Text us at 914-226-4772.
We'll text you back.
Don't believe us? Give it a try.
Lastly, our face is on a shirt. We have shirts now for Talking Lion with our faces on them. If you want to wear us on your shirt, buy a shirt. It helps support the show, and it shows your friends that you like Sleeping Lion and Talking Lion.
You can find these shirts on our website, sleepinglionmusic.com/store.
Likewise, as always, any support on Patreon would mean a lot. That's how we keep the show going, and it's a great way for you guys to become involved in the show.
Pro tip. Patreon supporters of the honorary Lion tier or higher will get a free shirt.
So check out our Patreon, patreon.com/talkinglion, to get involved in the show and unlock exclusive membership rewards. Now let's get on with the show. So we recorded this episode with Jacob Harelick. What to say about Jacob Harelick?
What to say about Jacob Harelick?
Well, we can start by talking about how we know him. I grew up with him. We were childhood friends in Westchester, New York. But we really met at Berkeley. He was in a bunch of bands, and we kept intersecting while we were at school.
Yeah, he most famously drummed on my Sound-alike of Africa by Toto.
But how do we talk about Jacob Harelick? Maybe his drum merits? He's drummed for quite a number of people.
Hit us with a list.
Oh boy, he's drummed for Salem, Emilia Ali, Sophia Gripari, OSTON, London Mars, Jake Bennet, Rozie Baker, Julia Gartha, and us. Likewise, any drums that you hear on our record, Different Plans, that's Jacob.
That's Jacob.
Jacob does drums. But wait, Noah, there's more.
There's more?
He introduced us to Ripe, who has been on the show. He is cameoed in a Lawrence music video. He is sponsored by Big Fat Snare. And, most importantly, he makes the best chicken sandwich I have ever had.
Jacob does buns.
Honestly, it's like the best chicken sandwich I've ever had. Since quarantine started, he's been making these awesome live from home videos, including one for us that will hopefully be coming out in the near future. And all in all, he's been one of the most hardworking and driven people we've been lucky enough to know. So,
without further ado,
this is Talking Lion.
oh, hello, Jacob.
Hey, everyone.
It is Jacob McHarelick.
Jacob McHarelick,
Hey, I'll take it.
Esquire.
That's not your name, is it?
It could be.
It's just Jacob Harelick, and we were family friends.
Oh, boy, were we.
Oh boy, I have a distinct memory. I don't remember child Jacob very well because I think friendlier with your brother because we were closer in age, I suppose.
Yeah, he's 4 years older than me.
So, I guess I'm like exactly the same age difference between you both.
Yeah. So, but
Yeah,
I mean, he's an obvious choice for a
Sure.
friend.
But I remember your dad balancing a chair on his chin.
Yeah, that's an activity he does. Was it like a Hanukkah party?
It was a Hanukkah party, and in fact, I believe he sang that he was going to do it. Like it was part of a song.
Wow.
I don't remember the exact lyrics that led up to it, but he sang that he was going to balance a chair on his chin, and then he did it.
There was a rap that he had that I like produced when it was like, high school, and I was just getting into production, and I was like, Dad, like this is like a rap. Like we should put this together. And of course it's like he made it in like the 90s and it's awful. And I couldn't tell you any of the lyrics, but I remember just being so proud of like my first beat. And that's when I knew, producing was not for me.
There we go. Like we said, play to your strengths.
Exactly.
And also waste time on your weaknesses.
Yes. Yeah.
I've always said that. You've heard me say that.
I've heard you say that before.
Yeah, But yeah, where do we even start in our storied history, Jacob?
Well,
I mean, I think your parents are interesting. Your dad, professional Simon Says.
Yeah, a professional Simon Says caller.
I've always found that to be fascinating because it's so cool.
This whole thing could honestly just be about him. It's always like a conversation starter because it's like a lot of people, first off, if they even bring up their parents, I always find it very interesting. But then to be like, oh, and my dad plays a children's game as a job. So back in New York, in the Catskills, up in the mountains, when he was, 18, he every summer would work at this place called the Vegetarian Hotel, which is where a lot of elderly people would go and, spend the summer. And so when you're older, there's not a lot to do. But a game like Simon Says, very simple. You follow along to instructions. You're not doing anything crazy. So he just kind of learned there, and then eventually brought it into like children's games and like children's birthday parties, and was doing it just, to make money. And it really worked, using like magic and stuff. And he eventually went to a basketball game with my mom, who worked at Kraft Foods. So there were like box seats. They got tickets somehow. And the halftime show was just awful. It was some guy who was, shooting hoops and couldn't even make it in. And it was like, what a waste of time. So he reached out to the game operations at Madison Square Garden and was like, I want to do Simon Says for this. And basically you bring 25 guys, 25 girls, or, adults versus kids, and they face off in a Simon Says challenge, eliminating people one by one until you get the top 2 people of each team. And then they have a dance off in the middle. And now he's, the nation's leading Simon Says caller, and he does halftime shows for NBA and NCAA. And I mean, November through March, he's extremely busy with that.
That's
absolutely wild.
Absolutely wild.
Yeah.
And I think what is interesting is that, for better or worse, you and I are somewhat similar.
Yeah.
Like we are very loud, fast talking, kind of like eccentric people. And I feel like a lot of that comes from A, just like New York Jews, and B, having parents. Like my mom is an improv theater teacher.
Yeah, exactly.
And like who works with children, and my dad is a motivational speaker. So like the blend of those two is this egregious human being.
Yeah, exactly. It is really interesting just like how much, and I think like, especially like growing up in Temple when, my parents were known at the specific temple, and, all the people would be like, you're like exactly like your parents. And of course at, the age of 14, I was like, I'm nothing like my parents, but now I'm just like, I am exactly my parents.
Well, now I'm almost like grateful, I'm like, oh, you see that similarity? Cool. So it's like, it's their fault.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And anything I do wrong, that's my parents. Anything I do right,
I take no responsibility for being like this all the time.
Yeah.
It's
So we did, Hanukkah parties and stuff, and we were just in that same group.
Do you remember you and I interacting before school?
I remember your name, but I don't remember. I feel like there was a Yom Kippur break fast that you might have been at, or that your name was mentioned.
That's both are possible.
Honestly, Westchester Judaism is such a blur to me because there was so much of it.
That's actually the slogan and motto for Westchester Judaism. It's just like
there is so much of it.
Westchester Judaism, come for Shabbat, stay for the blur,
Literally. But I do remember when
come for Shabbat, stay for 3 generations.
Yeah. Exactly. I remember calling Berkeley about something, and you were right next to whoever I happened to call, and we spoke on the phone for the first time. Do you remember this?
Oh.
I was like 17, and someone was working in the booth, and you were also like taking calls and answering questions. It might have been about 5 weeks. Oh, Berkeley was asking for money.
We were asking for money.
Which,
I was working in the call center.
very unlike Berkeley to ask for more money, but they did.
I mean, every college does it.
Yeah,
Come
no,
on,
we're all
they're trying their best.
they're all reaching out.
They're all reaching out.
But you happened to be next to whoever I was calling, and then we just spoke about just everything right then and there.
I really do remember that. Well, and then you were in that band Walking's Like Running.
Oh yeah.
And we played on your porch one summer.
I do remember that.
We went on tour in big air quotes.
Well, actually, what is really funny is that like that quote unquote tour produced what has become one of the most iconic centers of a story.
Oh yeah.
Of a relationship story, because the show we played at the Middle East was the intersection of 3 girlfriends.
That's right.
Accidentally.
Mm-hmm.
An ex had showed up to the show. Another ex had shown up to the show, having returned from Paris.
Mm-hmm.
And I was going out with somebody at the time who I was supposed to be back at her place after the show.
I do remember this.
It was complicated, but it's a hilarious story.
And there were
now.
like those were the 3 people in the audience at that show.
Yeah, it was them, my mom, and George Woods showed up, the songwriting teacher,
Oh yeah.
but it started in New York, and it was so Walking is Like Running started at the 5-week program
Oh,
the year
right.
before.
We played the terrible show in Brooklyn where 2 people showed up and one of them was our publicist.
Yes, at
Oh,
Much More's.
yeah.
Yeah, it was
At
like
Much More's. Oh man.
More like lesser.
Yeah, definitely way less. Just lower your expectation.
More
Lower
like
your-
such less.
Yeah, and then that was the summer before Jeremy and I then went to Berkeley, and Walking is Like Running died soon after, just because.
And then you were in Arthur the Pleasure.
Oh boy!
Wait, no, then you were also in Soul Candy.
No,
That was after Arthur the Pleasure.
Yeah, Noah's got the timeline. Arthur the
I got
Pleasure.
the timeline. I was there intermittently for all of it.
I remember that. But that started
Producing like Rick Rubin from the Wings, letting other people do most of the work.
Well, because I met Arthur at the 5-week program, and then Adam and I became friends. Just based off of our friend group, we just hung out. We didn't really like going to the docks and drinking, so we just kind of hung out. And I introduced him to Arthur. We had a little jam, and we were like, "What if we put together like a 20-piece funk band and just
What if? Casually.
What could go wrong? You know?"
Well, what's interesting about like that sort of time, other than it being sort of our introduction to Adam, who's like Noah's really close friend, and to Alex Burrell, who we mentioned on the podcast because he's like Sophia Gripari's close collaborator.
Yeah.
It also, I remember like my friend, meeting my friend Laura, who was sort of like the interim manager of this 15-piece project, and there was a lot of drama and all this, like whatever. I remember Laura saying something about you that I'll never forget, which is she's like, Jacob is a okay drummer, but really good at getting shit together. And I remember you like that sort of inspiring conversation that you and I had, which was essentially like, hey, on the one hand, I think you could probably get better at drumming. But on the other hand, there are ways of being a valuable drummer that don't mean you being the craziest drummer at Berkeley.
Yeah, and I knew that going into Berkeley because I had seen it. I went to 5-week for piano because I was a classically trained pianist. Like, drumming was just something I did for fun. And at 5-week, I realized how much I hated piano and joined Walking is Like Running, was the drummer. And I was going to go to Berkeley for piano, but texted both Jeremy Saunders and Zach Tobes and was like, if I got in, I don't think I'd be happy going for piano. So I called 2 weeks before my audition and was like, may I switch to drums? And they were like, yeah, we don't care. And I told my parents and they flipped out because piano, even if you're okay, sounds beautiful, coming throughout the house. Like,
right.
To be able to brag that your kid's like a pianist, like, oh yeah.
It's a fun party trick.
But even if I was the best drummer you've ever heard, drums coming from the basement sucks.
Oh, yeah.
It's not fun.
So that's when I reached out to the Ripe guys and was like, hey, can I use one of your songs? Because the Talk to the Moon video had just come out as a Berkeley video. And so I reached out to Samson, the drummer, and was like, hey, can you send me a drumless track so I can audition with this? And then 2 weeks later, went to the audition, used Ripe's track, and, luckily got in 2 months later.
Which you introduced us to Ripe, like both like as an artist, like you first showed us their music, but also I think you tweeted at both of us.
Yeah.
While we were like on a megabus, and by the time we got off the megabus, Robbie, like the singer of Ripe, who we've had on the show, Robbie, we all get sushi together and talk about, he was one of the first people to like kind of give us advice in the music space,
Yeah, well, so Ripe I just discovered through the Berkeley video, and then I loved like that type of music. It was just funk, pop, easy to dance to. I loved horns. Like that was the whole idea behind Arthur the Pleasure, was like trying to make that a Ripe sort of group, which eventually led to Soul Candy and all that. But I remember going into True Value and seeing Josh, the trumpet player. And I had seen their YouTube videos, I had seen all this, but I'd never met them. And I was just like, hey, are you Josh from Ripe? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, I'm Jacob, huge fan. And of course, Josh, at this point, especially in 2017, 2016, Ripe is doing fine, but like isn't expecting to just get noticed. And then I remember I ran into Robbie at CVS. And I was like literally like a kid in a candy store and just stood there like shocked. And he looked, and I think he had recognized me from like Facebook, but he wasn't processing it as quickly as I was. So I just like didn't know what to say. and I was just like, hey, I love your music. And it was just so uncomfortable. But now like Arthur the Pleasure got to open for him at like a house show. And there was just a lot of very full circle things that came from just being like, hey, I love your music. And now like,
well, and that was the thing is like, I feel like you, I really admired the way that you put yourself like out there. Like by the time you were in school and by the time, you were kind of in this space, you were talking to the people who inspired you. And like I feel like one of the Berkeley takeaways that either kids do or don't is like, you can say hello to whoever you want,
Yeah.
and it's on them to say, hey back. But Robbie's just such a nice guy. And we did spend a good chunk of the episode that he was on here talking about
oh
you,
yeah.
so.
I mean, that was so awesome to have that come like full circle. And after a show, he like left his credit card and was like, hey, if you could bring this, like, let's get lunch. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. And my dad loves their music. So it's just been like very nice to just have them involved.
Now, how do you know Lawrence? Because you're in a Lawrence video.
I am
You're like in a Lawrence music video.
Lawrence. So this was the same way that I kind of met Ripe. Just like they were posting YouTube videos and getting thousands of views, but nothing like crazy. And I just friended them on Facebook and was like, hey, you're doing, a show in White Plains where I grew up. I would love to like meet you. And they were super nice and super chill. And we just, became friends over it. And then Gracie posted that they were doing a music video and they needed people. And it was a 5 a.m. shoot in Long Island. And I was like, you know what? Me and my friends love Lawrence. Let's do it. And we went, did the music video. And it was awesome to like just be involved with these people that are doing so well and are such wonderful people.
Well, and I think that like, especially in the last like year and a half, they've had everything that they've deserved thrown at them, like now, now they've got the Beautiful Mind behind them and they've got John Bellion's support. Like it's been so cool to sort of see them and they're just putting out such great stuff,
I think both groups especially. And I think I took that mindset from my parents where, my dad wasn't on track to become, an NBA, NCAA halftime show. Probably never even thought of it, but just reached out. And the worst thing they can do is say no or not respond. So that's just kind of like, I would rather reach out and potentially have the opportunity or have my name somewhat in their database rather than, never do it at all.
Well, that's such a simple yet out there philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
You got to ask for what you want.
Yeah.
And it's crazy that we spend all this time like talking and going around and, like trying to do like come up with these complicated solutions to simple problems. And the hardest thing for us is to actually express what we want or to reach out and say, oh, hey, like, I don't care if you say no, but I would feel bad if I didn't ask,
And like, that's how just kind of like how I thought of Berkeley was there's so many talented kids that just had no idea how to book a practice room and how to like,
we did not. I mean, we're a duo because we genuinely could not.
And in no universe was I going to be waking up at 8 a.m. to do literally anything.
And
like there were more members of Sleeping Lion that eventually it like by Occam's razor came down to Noah and I because we couldn't book practice rooms out.
Yeah, well, I think that's part of the Arthur the Pleasure thing was like we all like it was such a big group, but we all just like we had a Facebook group that we were like rehearsals are going to be this and that, and Mark Sales, the saxophone player, would wake up every morning and book it for the next one and would post immediately, and we'd know what room, what time, like who needed to be there. And so although that didn't end up being the end game, you learn so much from doing it. And that's where I met some of my best friends and some people that I would eventually work with, 10 times over. And I think Berkeley is all about making mistakes because it's such a safe place to do it. And although it's a small school, like nothing not super serious will like end your career. Like it's okay to, fuck up here and there.
And that's the thing is like learning where it's safe to learn the lessons the hard way.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that was the thing that really impressed me about you when you moved out here. And you know why? Like while we were considering other drummers and looking into other drummers, I don't think we ever really pulled the trigger because you would be like, when I'm out there, I'm your drummer. When I'm out there, I'm your drummer. And we're like, I guess we got to hear him out, you know? And then all of a sudden, like you're a hot commodity. Like you are like we have to book you in advance because you got like,
Could you imagine me like coming out here and me being like, I was supposed to bring my own drums. Like, this is just the way it is. My Instagram name is just like a cover up. I actually don't play drums. Like, just keep this whole thing going.
No, but like you became everybody's drummer. Like you were playing for Kaylee and Sophia Gripari and Salem, who, by the way, is having the craziest.
God, it is amazing to watch, just to see every day. And like, I was going to congratulate her on like her first million because it was creeping up there. And then by the time she texted back responding, it was at 3 million. And I was like, well, like, I feel like this is less cool.
I know. I congratulated them on US viral 50. And then by the time I sent the text, it was global viral. And I'm like, you know how I feel.
Like,
I'm not going to.
It's 4.8 million currently. I think by the time this episode comes out, it'll probably be in the 10 millions.
Yeah.
She has 1 million monthly listeners as of today. And 5 days ago, she was at, I think, 100,000 or 200,000 or something like that.
Well, it really inspired me to like watch old videos. And so the Salem gig happened purely because Caroline Carlson was her manager for a point. And Caroline had just moved out to LA and they were looking to put a band behind Salem. And Emilia Ali was like one of the first kind of pop artists to come out of Berkeley, like in our grades, where it was like an artist and a backing band and full live set arrangements, which I hadn't seen. It was a lot of bands or a lot of duos like you, and just, it was like Emilia Ali is the star. And so they were trying to copy that somewhat with Salem, but didn't want to make it exactly the same band. So they got Spoof to come and play guitar, and then I had gotten the SPD and other things, and basically was just like hounding Carol and being like, hey, like, I would really love to do this. Like, this would be awesome. And it just so happened to work out where, you know, she sent me some demos and I recorded myself playing and did like a self-tape, which she didn't ask for or anything, but I was just like, how could I really show these people that I want to do it? And it was taking 10 minutes out of my day to record on my iPhone, just impatient, the ending, and they love that, and it worked out really well.
Well, I also, I think one of the things that you add, which we're going to be experiencing this evening when we record our live at home version of different plans, is that you also do these interludes. Like, I think that one of the things that like I really liked about seeing Salem live, because we opened for her. You played. There was one show at Peppermint where you played both sets. You played our set and you played her set.
Yeah.
But just like the interludes that you throw between songs, I think is really cool, and how you build into each song and everything. Like that was always, you know, it's not just coming in to play the drums. It's having like, you're a creative guy and you have the capability of being creative. Though I also remember that, you know, when we realized that the backing track for We're Fine didn't have keys.
Oh
so
my
you and
God.
I like went out to my van and like I like grabbed like a small MIDI keyboard to like actually track in.
And it was something you had like in the back of your car. It was like, it wasn't even like a 25 key. And we were just like, we found the simplest keyboard patch, and I didn't like produce in Ableton at that point. I merely knew how to route tracks, you know, put in the click track and do all that. So we're in there just like, kind of just like praying that it works. And I'm like,
yeah, we're creative problem solving on a
but
a
like
very
we also
tight
don't have
timeline.
Wi-Fi, so we can't like Google. And I'm like, how do you quantize? Like, how do this? And you're like, maybe if you just press Q.
Well, Noah was in Rome too, so
Yeah.
it was like we had time zone shit that we were dealing with. Like I couldn't like get things
Exactly.
from him. You know, it was one of those like one-off shows where like it was just you and I.
But I mean, it worked out great. Like that was such a fun show at the Satellite.
Well, I feel like playing We're Fine with you is what kind of inspired the version of We're Fine that now is out in the world. Like the way that the drums kind of built out these certain sections to make them kind of bigger than they were, you know?
And I remember the first weekend out to LA pretty much a year ago in September, just like setting up in your living room, and we all were wearing ears and like just getting all together.
Yeah, that rehearsal for the Peppermint Show.
For the Peppermint Show, and just like you had all these songs, and a lot of them I'd heard before or attempted to play, but like it was the first time just like sitting down and being like, here's 5 songs that we have that we love, and put some drums on them, and just working it out was just so fun. And I think a lot with pop music, like there's definitely room for live drums, and a lot of people are afraid to put it in, which is what I think like Travis Barker is doing such a great job of like making these huge sample packs that are already done. So all you have to do is drag and drop them. And I mean, it makes it so easy to have that live element in there.
Well, and what I thought was really like cool about that experience with you is it reminded me of being in band practice like
Yeah.
in ninth grade. Like, it
I
reminded me
used to practice.
of like coming up with the drum parts. Yeah.
I used to practice like coming with the drum parts on the fly in my friend's living room, like in this big marble living room, and doing it downstairs in our mostly empty downstairs area felt like the stuff that I grew up on.
Yeah. Well, and also you suggested for Lonely in LA having Travis Barker's drums pan left and your drums pan right, which is Travis Barker approved now.
Yeah, no, that was awesome. That was mainly an ego thing because I just really wanted to be on the track. And I was like, Travis Barker's produced out drums obviously sound way better than mine recorded in a 10 by 10, crap room. So I was like, what if we pan them left and right? That would be pretty crazy. And luckily it sounded cool, or else that would have just been a waste of time. But it was kind of like my way of being like, how could I still get on this track that I love? Because when I heard that track, The Lonely in LA, before we even performed it, like right when I was just driving around, I was like, this is an amazing song.
I appreciate that. And I think in a lot of ways, the live from home video that you did with her inspired a lot of what we wound up bringing to the final version of the track,
Yeah.
the way a track sort of circles around on itself. But yeah, also, yeah, what I love about that is like we don't have a ride on the Travis Barker drums, but you played your ride on yours. So the ride is only coming from the right side. But I was listening to like Beatles records like the other day. And if you listen to something like Come Together, like it is 90% drums on the right side.
Yeah.
And then like 10% of like a drums echo on the left side.
Yeah. I remember when you made fun of the Walking's Like Running EP because the drums were like just all the way to the right. And it wasn't like a Beatles type thing. It was just like there were fills happening somewhere else and grooves happening on the other side. So you guys were in your minivan being like, how's that fill sound over there? And you're, sounds great.
That's so funny.
And at that point, we had no idea, like, I didn't know what stereo and mono was. Like, I understood the concept, but I was like, what do you mean it was mixed in this way or recorded in this way? And I think Berkeley is what really gave me that,
Well, interestingly enough, I learned like the stereo mono stuff from doing film work. Because, when you're working on backgrounds, it has to be stereo.
Yeah.
Because it has to exist around.
Yeah.
Whereas like if a car is passing by and you want it to sound like it's going from left to right, unless that car was stereo recorded, you have to pan it from left to right.
Sure, yeah.
One of my mentors said something interesting, which was anything you see on the screen that is doing something should be mono because you should be able to see where it is and it's coming at you. And sort of applying that to music has been really interesting.
Yeah.
Just as far as like, oh, well, when do we want our voices to be pan stereo?
Right.
What do we get out of that?
Yeah.
Versus coming at you straight on.
Yeah, well, I think it was like the 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. sessions with Noah and all these other producers that I met, like Brad Feeney and just like all these guys, and just being like, I didn't know how to play to a click at that point. I didn't know anything about how drums should really sound because 2 weeks before the audition, switched to drums. And I'd been playing drums, but like at outdoor shows or like bars and restaurants where the quality does not matter. Like if you can play a little jazz swing, you're fine for a 3-hour set. But like to really, hone in on your craft and all these sounds was so interesting.
I remember working on my Africa Sound Alike with you. And like that was like one of the biggest challenges I've ever faced as an engineer, like trying to like mimic the sound of one of the best recording studios in the world, recording one of the best session drummers in the world on like a really expensive drum kit, trying to like recreate that with you in Berkeley Studio A at 6 a.m. with Brad Feeney engineering. I'm just going to come out and say it did not sound as good.
Oh, no.
But we tried our best and got as close as we possibly could.
There are 2 funny moments from that night. That was one of the first 2 a.m. to 6 a.m.s I did. And Jeremy was trying to get out of it so bad. Jeremy did not want to, and now Jeremy is working in PR and marketing and he's killing it, but he hated.
Oh, I didn't know that. I love that for him.
Yeah, he hated playing bass. And so a 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. session to play Africa by Toto was not his ideal like Tuesday night. And so he was like posting, trying to get someone else. And I was like, Jeremy, you have to do this. We get there. And then at 2 a.m., I get hit with like this wave of just exhaustion. And Jeremy, for some reason, just lights up and is having the best time. So it totally switched. And then you asked me in one take, because it fades out at the end, you were like, oh, and we're just going to fade it out at the end. So I thought that meant that I should do a decrescendo. So at the end of the song, I just start playing quieter and quieter on the Africa beat, and you're like, "What the hell are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm fading out."
And you're like, "That's not how this works, Jacob."
I was like, "Oh, you can do that in post? Very cool. Like, very, very sweet. Like, I had no idea."
I appreciate the effort, though.
I do appreciate that. Like, you've been now on quite a number of our records. Like, I think, it's a testament to how well you've been able to record drums remotely. One of the things I noticed, especially working on We're Fine, is that you're very safe. Mm-hmm. You would send recordings that were very functional. And I remember when we were doing We're Fine, I'm like, all of this works. Now can you go crazy? And that's where like that crazy fill comes in at the end, and like where a lot of like the weird stuff. Like I'm like, oh cool. Like, we got Jacob Unchained.
Yeah, well, I think that all started because I was a normal rock drummer. Like I enjoyed doing that, and I would do fills in very unnecessary places, and then started playing with artists like Salem and artists like Rozie Baker, where it is not about you even a little bit. And it was like, Bennet would always be like, "You don't need to do that." And I'm like, "You bring up a delightful point. Like, I don't need to do that." like that fill right there is bringing nothing to the table. So got very comfortable literally just playing exactly what was written, getting one cool moment. And that was why I started doing like these interludes, was that the band could have a moment and just kind of show off. And that was it. And then we'd go right back to playing the groove. And I realized, as I was playing with Salem, the first couple of gigs, I would still do some unnecessary fills. And I would watch it later on my GoPro and be like, why did I do that? And the gigs where I did absolutely nothing, I was so stoked about. So doing the session work, a lot of people have been like, I like to give just like the bare minimum of just like, this is what your track could sound like. So people can be like, that's perfect, do nothing else. Or they can be like, please go ape on it.
Well, it's funny because, one of our mutual friends from Westchester is our friend Donaldtrudelma.
Yes.
Who is one of the craziest drummers, I would say, in Westchester, New York, if not New York.
Yeah.
Like the non-city part of New York.
Yeah.
Like, he is a crazy drummer.
Yeah, absolutely.
And will always does insane crazy fills, but that's his bag,
Yeah.
And I feel like when I ask for crazy, I'm just like, channel a little Donald. Get a little Donald going.
And the thing is, he's so much older than me that I remember being 16 or 17 and we went to Yonkers to just hang out. I remember it was a release show or something, or it was just us hanging out, and I was just amazed by his fills. And most of them were just like 30-second notes and like just very creative things that like I eventually learned how to do. But just like looking at that, I was like, oh my God, like this is the best drummer in the world. And
I mean, that's how I felt growing up too. Yeah, we went to his studio for the Patient Creature EP release.
Yes, yeah, that's right.
And he was playing along and stuff, and just like where he manages to find places to accent.
Oh yeah,
like it was just always so cool. I feel like it was a good point of reference.
Oh yeah,
because then it lets you contextualize drummers like Matthew Chenery.
Yeah.
Who plays with for those listening, he plays with Lux, and if you check him out on Instagram, is like one of the also a crazy drummer, but in this other space, it's a little bit cleaner,
Yeah, I mean, and we had a songwriting class together, and he is just the nicest dude, great songwriter,
so nice.
But also just an amazing drummer, and that's what Berkeley was like, just seeing all these people that were amazing musicians, but then you find out that they also can do this or that, and meeting drummers out here, I realized that everyone has like a little niche, and like one drummer loves wine, and that's his thing. He is loves vineyards, like will go out of his way to see wine. And I was always like, oh, so you're not just drumming. Like, that's interesting. And another guy loves investment banking. And I was just like, and so it's like everyone has one weird thing that they love doing.
What's your weird thing then?
Oh my God.
Is it Professional Simon Says?
It might be Professional Simon Says. I might have to I feel like I would rather be like 30 and answer that. So I've been working on it for like my whole life.
Yeah, that's fair.
That's fair.
Because I would say tennis, but that's pretty normal and Westchester.
Yeah, that definitely tracks. But I do think, like, as far as your niche as a drummer, you've been really good on the development side. Like, I think you've been really good as like artist first drummer.
Yeah, and not to downplay your role as a music director. Like you've really stepped into the shoes of a music director.
That's what I'm sort of playing at. Like you take people who don't have drummers and don't have their live shit together, and you get that sorted.
Yeah,
in like a really in a really good way, I think.
Well, yeah, I think a lot of that comes from my dad, who at my temple growing up, we didn't have lights on the stage. So all these like Israeli army guys would come in and do speeches or performances, and they would just be in complete darkness. And so my dad went out of his way, bought 2 lights to bring. They were basically spotlights, and would set them up at every show, regardless of if he was involved or not. And it was just kind of like he wanted to go so far out of his way to make something better. And I see all these artists who are capable of doing such amazing things. And for me, it like isn't that much effort to bring an in-ear rig or to get the stems and put them into a session and just to do something that they maybe don't know how to do or don't know how to do yet, and just be like, this is what I can provide for you. I just love doing. And yeah, the musical director thing happened a lot because of Salem and artists before then, and just artists not really knowing what they wanted out of like a set, and just being like, yeah, I want to play the songs. And I'm like, yeah, but people also want a little more than the songs. Like, how could we really spice this up and really make something cool?
I've been impressed with your taste, and even all the sort of live from home stuff, you know, like how much care and effort you put into them to make those work. I have a final question for you. It's a very important one.
I'm ready.
Would you say that the show we played at the Middle East together?
I was hoping you
your
would bring this
origin
up.
story?
Yes, absolutely.
Was this your spider bite?
Well,
was this your parents dying in the alley?
Oh my! I would say my parents dying in the alley was a session with Laura Wilson that Noah, you might have been at.
Maybe.
It was in Studio 3, and we were recording for Arthur the Pleasure, and we were doing. It was like 98 BPM, and the click comes in quarter notes, and I cannot play to it. And there's all these.
Oh, I wasn't there, but I heard about it.
Yeah, which is awful. That I hate that you heard about it. That's horrible to hear.
That's almost worse.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like if you were there, no, at least you'd be like, oh yeah, I remember that. It's like, no, it's legend.
No,
It's legend.
And couldn't play to a click. It was just all these great MP&E, students, and they were like, "Are you gonna tune your toms?" And I was like, "What do you mean tune my toms? Like,
They're drums.
they're and they're like, they sound like shit." And to hear that, and of course Jeremy was just sitting there and as a bassist had to do absolutely nothing. So it made it so much worse that he plugged in and was like ready to go, and they were like yelling at me. So that was what, made me want to play to a click. And then we get to our show, which I finally convinced you to do live drums for 2 songs, just on Handful and Generous. And I was like, guys, trust me, this is going to be great.
I mean, you were talking up the concept of having you on as a drummer for years.
Oh, yeah.
And then talking up this specific show that it was going to be nuts. So, which, by the way, the show itself was so interesting in context because
set that scene.
It was how. So we were opening for Sophia Gripari.
Mm-hmm.
Sophia Gripari had us on. So now, at the time we didn't know her, but that was the moment we met her.
Yeah.
Now our collaborator and close friend.
Yeah.
But also that was the first show that we met Emilia Ali at.
Mm-hmm.
She, the school year was sort of starting and she had arrived. And Robbie from Ripe was also at the show.
Yeah.
Oh,
so
yeah.
that was the first time that my parents were meeting my girlfriend at the time. Soul Candy was playing the first show that it had played on like a real stage. So we got to hear this 7-piece band mic'd up, coming through like subwoofers and everything, which was supposed to be a Ripe 2.0. And so then, and we were performing a Ripe song.
Yeah, you played Downward.
We played Downward, and Robbie, who wrote it, is 5 feet in front of us. So there was a lot of pressure building up just on every front.
Which, for what it's worth, the Soul Candy set was great.
Thank you.
I thought you guys did a great job. I remember Robbie being very verklempt about hearing a very good rendition of Downward.
Which I love about Robbie. It just he's a human.
That did not save you for the next set.
So then you guys go on and killing it, doing the set, and it's about time. And so we were running everything out of your SPD, and we did a 6-channel split of the click track, thinking this will be fine. Not noticing that the noise floor would just out of the way. And it's going to my own mixer, and so everything's great. And Handful comes in, and the click is there. And then as soon as Noah starts playing the comping pattern that comes in halfway through, it is the most overpowering thing ever. And it's blasting in my in-ears, so I can't hear anything but that. And so just what is a short 3-minute pop song was maybe 10 minutes of my life just to see
your own personal hell.
Yeah, to see Robbie, the girlfriend I was trying to impress, all these people, and Nate, you were dancing, trying to keep me in time because you still had the click, but it was like couldn't really watch that and also be the loudest.
Like behind me, I'm trying to like count off with like my, like
and so,
hand behind my back, like doing a dance.
And it's like, of course, I'm the loudest thing in the room because the Middle East is not big at all. It's not like I'm mixed in properly. It's like these tracks and then drums, and then it ended. And I was just like, all right, well, I'm definitely not going to sit through the second song that we were planning on doing.
Well, but all I saw was you like getting up to go. I'm like, where do you think you're going? Like, where do you think you are?
Yeah. And I remember just being like so destroyed. And I was like, I need a fail safe for the future about like click tracks. And I mean, I would say it's definitely.
Did you play Generous with us?
No.
Too?
Yeah.
No,
you did.
I bounced.
You bounced?
And I didn't even
Wow.
I didn't give you back the snare or the ride. I was so embarrassed.
Oh, right. That was the thing I was the most upset about, I think, was that it wasn't that you were off time in a handful, and it wasn't that you didn't play Generous with us. It was that I didn't have the crash.
So the end of Generous.
So the ending of Generous was just me sort of like dinking around on the SPD.
Yeah, and the thing is, I had gotten a personal mix from the drum like mix. So the huge like 6-foot speaker next to me wasn't playing anything because I took a mix to go into my in-ears. So I couldn't even like rely on anything for that set. So that's when I knew.
So I repeat my question. Was that your origin story?
I would say yes.
Was that when you were like, all right, I'm gonna live drum and I'm gonna live drum well.
I was like, this is definitely a wake-up call. But the thing is, the Soul Candy set had also been to click, and that was totally fine. So I was like, it might just be me.
You're feeling good.
Yeah, I mean, our SPD's click system is a little janky, in your defense. Like, we had never tested it outside of the two of us. And even with the two of us, it's touch and go at best. We just know our tracks really well.
But again, not in your defense. The thing I was the most upset about is that you didn't give me back the crash ride and snare.
Yeah,
so I was drumless.
I like walked to the corner, I remember, and just sat there for a little bit, and then came as like the finish of Generous was going on, and the guitarist of Ripe, John, was like, so what happened? And I was like, oh, the click disappeared. And he was like, for sure. And of course, Ripe, shits on playing the click and doesn't want to use tracks. So there was no sympathy at all there. It was just like, nope.
Well, I still look at that fondly because I see that as the beginning of a beautiful. That's Caterpillar Jacob,
Yeah.
You're a butterfly now.
And then playing the Peppermint Club and it going super well and just being like this kind of
that's your arc. That's your redemption arc.
Yeah, and just like another venue where still the drums are the loudest thing in the room, but I think it's very exciting playing with these artists where we want to do these full-on live productions, but none of the venues really are capable of holding them or making them sound really good. And I think that all these people like Salem and like you guys and Sophia are just going to keep climbing until, it's the Greek theater where the drums will be the lowest thing in the mix, and it'll be awesome to have come like full circle.
Right.
I believe in this group in the way that you do. I mean, hell, if we could play shows, I imagine Salem would be already slated for the Greek. At this point.
Yeah. It will be really interesting to see what happens with everyone, because I like our friend group specifically, I think is capable of just amazing things, and I see no reason why everyone shouldn't be doing awesome things, writing songs for people and performing at huge venues. Like, so I think it's just a matter of when.
I've seen it as the tide. The tide rises every ship, and like Salem was always going to be the first domino, but I feel like it's it's a community, and I'm curious to see like how it all kind of percolates. But you've had an interesting year too. Like, I think that your year started with with your broken heels.
There we go. They were fractured. I don't want to overstate anything. Definitely.
All right. Well,
it was just a bilateral calcaneus fracture. All right.
I thought you were joking when you first told me you broke both your heels.
One artist thought that I just really didn't want to play with her, and then I sent her a picture of me in 2 huge casts, and she was like, "Oh, okay."
Well, and then you come back mid-March, ready to play shows.
and
ready to get out there.
And everyone was like, don't come back. There's no point. And I was like, listen, I just sat on my ass for 2 months. Like, I'm getting out of New York. And I mean, luckily you guys were like, so, gracious to have me play drums and stuff. And that opened up a lot more session work just to have like that opportunity to.
Has that helped? Has that like, being on our stuff?
Absolutely. And
has it been?
Yeah. I mean, no one heard it and then listened to it and was like, I need this. But people like saw that I was recording and were like, oh, you have a setup. And so I think just like a familiar name like Sleeping Lion has inspired people to want to book me.
That's exciting. That makes me very happy.
Yeah.
Again, going back to the tide rising every ship.
Exactly. If you had to place money on it, who do you think would be the next person to blow up? So we can we can look back on this.
Can I say us just to, like, save face and also, like, put our narcissistic money where our mouth is?
Yeah, Casper will be out in the world eventually.
Yeah.
And if we aren't the face of pop rising after that, I'm literally quitting.
I think it might be just Bendick. Like, he really surprises us and just becomes...
Bendick is he went to Berkeley for voice. Like, he can sing. Like, if he wanted to, he has music where he's singing on it that he does not show anyone, including Salem.
Yeah.
But he's like Max Martin, who's also famously a singer who is secretive about his singing. Like, Bendick could totally pull off an artist project and it would absolutely slay.
Oh my God. I'm going to put my money on Bendick. There we go.
Yeah.
There he goes. Done.
Your early Bendick post was one of the funniest things I've seen this week.
Oh, yeah.
I want you to know that, Jacob.
That made me, I was just, because the thing was, it's like...
Well, no, wait, you gotta describe it for the listeners.
Okay, so
what it is.
So Pop Rising, which is one of Spotify's upstreaming playlists, they all have subtitles. All of them that tier of playlist all have subtitles, and the one for Pop Rising is Early Bets. Actually, maybe they're all early bets. That's the designated subtitle for that tier. So that's the Early Bets tier. In the picture of Salem on the cover of Pop Rising with Early Bets underneath it, you Photoshop Bendick's face very poorly, might I add, over Salem's own face in black and white, and replaced Early Bets with Early Bendick, and it is the funniest thing I've seen all week.
Pop Bendick, Early Bendick.
It was just, I think it's so funny watching people like get recognition, and Salem and Bendick both incredibly deserve it. They work so hard, and I just want to like humble them a little bit. Not that they need it, but just like I found all these old videos of us performing for 2 people, and it's like doing full out live sets, like with the works, like full minute-long intros where Salem runs up on the stage and off the stage. And I just like think it's the funniest thing where it's like my parents are the only ones in the crowd. And like, I can't wait until Salem blows up officially that I can post that and be like, yeah, we once played like the Bowery downstairs and my parents were the only ones there.
Right. That's part of the fun of this whole thing. That's half the reason we have this podcast is just for moments like that.
Very, very much so. I mean, I think we started this so that we could just mark the time.
Yeah.
I mean, what I love about our interview with Salem is that she talks about Mad at Disney, and she talks about how she doesn't know how long it's going to be able to last on streaming platforms before she gets sued and gets a takedown notice, and she's describing the song and we talk about Disney films and all that stuff. And, little did we know
that was going to be
that was going to be the thing.
Yeah.
But nobody knows. Like, if people knew, then it'd be a much different industry. I think what's exciting is is knowing in our heart of hearts that like our friends have it, seeing that proven correct on multiple occasions.
Yeah.
And, and continuing to, very genuinely support the community. Like, I think that like just being people in this and being friends in this is like the most important thing. And so, yeah, this podcast is sort of here just to mark the time,
Hey.
and to shine a light on who these people are,
Yeah, I think it's you guys are doing awesome stuff, and I'm stoked to be a little part of it.
Well, I'm glad that you're on the podcast. You called me like 3 days ago,
Yeah.
sort of jokingly, like, when am I going to be on the podcast? And I'm just like, do you want to be? You were like,
I felt like I'd been mentioned like in 5 different podcasts, and I was just kind of like, I want to speak my truth.
Do you feel like your truth was adequately spoken, Jacob?
Absolutely. I just want to do this again in 10 years and be like, what an idiot we were, One
I can't wait for that.
One collective idiot.
We're one collective idiot, but that what's nice is that means that we're all individually a third of an idiot, and that's a good ratio.
Hey, I'll take that ratio any day.
That's a passing grade.
That's 1/3 is a passing grade.
No, 1/3 an idiot means that you're
66% not an idiot.
Exactly.
Which means
which
you're
is
just
exactly
about
what I
Just about
got.
passing.
Which was exactly my like final in songwriting.
Oh,
Amazing.
I slept through my final piano proficiency, so
Yeah.
I got a 93 on my final proficiency.
All right.
Well, look at
All
you.
right,
Why don't
Noah.
You fucking,
I was
get on your high horse.
Yeah, I fucking did it. I worked really hard. That's why the only reason I say it. I actually put in the hours in a practice room doing scales for hours.
Oh my God.
So that I could do it correctly.
I would just
And what did it get me? Literally nothing.
Well, I had piano with Jake Bennet. So we would just sit there and mess around for an hour. And then it finally got to the final, and 30 minutes before we were like, should we? And so he wore a sling. His arm was in a sling so he could like be like, hey, super sorry.
Oh my
if it's-
god!
And so
you faked an injury.
he faked it. He still
That's
did
hardcore.
great. But we did minuet in G and da 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 da.
Everybody, Backstreet's Back.
Yes, that one. Yes,
Cool.
that specific one.
Cool.
And I'm just playing wrong notes, like not even close to it. And Jake is just laughing behind me. And I think I got an 80, and I was like, I'll take it.
That's pretty good.
Well, Jacob, now that your truth has been spoken, do you have any final words for the people back home?
Just wash your hands. It's
That's
very,
good.
It's very simple. I love washing my hands.
And we have we notoriously are really terrible at ending the chat episodes. So it's your turn to come up with the outro. What's the tagline? What's the sign off?
Oh God. Call your mom.
We would like to thank Alan C. for supporting Talking Lion on Patreon and Isotope.